But let me start 6 o'clock. Actually, I have 6:01 on Monday, May 16, 2022. My name is Josh Burstein. I am privileged to serve as the chair of the Eugene 4J School District Budget Committee, and I call us to order. And first we'll do the roll call. So let me get that out. And please let me know with any words you wish if you are here. Dakota Boulette.
I'm here.
Here. Joshua Burstein, that's me. I am here. Gary Campbell.
Evening.
Hey, Gary. Tom DiLiberto.
I'm here.
Tom is here. And Fifield.
I am here.
And Alicia Hayes.
Here.
Here. Kirthi Hasija Kaufman.
Here.
Michelle Shu. I don't see her yet. Gordon Lafer. Gordon, I don't see him yet. Judy Newman, Laurel O'Rourke, and Maya Rabasa in alphabetical order are the three who are attending another meeting right now, but will join as soon as they can. So we'll hold off on that. Erica Thesson.
I'm here and I'm in my car, so I'm going to turn off the camera.
Okay. And as long as you're not driving your car while you're on the meeting. And Juan Carlos Valier. I saw you.
I'm here.
There you are, Juan Carlos. Okay, let me just do a second call for Michelle Shu, Gordon Lafer, Judy Newman, Laurel O'Rourke, and Maya Rabasa. Okay,
I
so
know
as
Lisa's working towards getting us all as panelists due to the outage.
right, I know there is an outage at 4J central office. So there may be some issues with that as well. But for now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members of the committee. I believe we do have a quorum, so we can get started. And as those 5 who are not on yet, hopefully join us soon. We will announce that for us and for the members of the public. Let us do next a roll call. I did that. Agenda review. So the meeting we have from 6 to 7:30. As you saw in the materials sent out by staff, we have after this agenda review public comment. I believe at this point we do have 1 person signed up for public comment. Andrew, thank you. Then items for information. And this will include, as you saw in the materials, a PowerPoint and also more answers to questions we had. We, as a committee, I'll remind you, had many questions that were answered last time, and that of course led to more questions which are in our materials. And I answer this at this time. And for any member, any person from the public listening, I believe those materials are available on the 4J website. I'm looking at Andrea to nod. Yes, okay. So that's 4 of their items for information, which also then includes our discussion. And then items for action, we're looking at 7 o'clock approximately. We have minutes to approve from before, and then also this is our last meeting, and based on the calendar, we need to approve approve. What's the word? Approve. And that sends it to the board, who is the group in June that actually adopts the budget. So statutorily, that is our role. That will include the budget and also the tax rates and debt service levy. And then at 7:15, assuming that's in, then we still have 15 minutes. And I had asked staff, and they added to the agenda based on some discussions I had with some committee members at that point for us to look at some questions regarding any outstanding items or topics that we had questions about after this meeting, because obviously we will vote and that will fulfill a role, but there may be some outstanding questions, and also suggestions for next year's budget committee schedule and sessions. And that is some discussion I had with a couple of folks on the committee who talked about, when during the year to start and how to incorporate more information from the public and things like that. So I just wanted to let you all know that we have that at the end as sort of a, after we vote, there we are. So before I go to public comment, I just want to see that I did see Michelle Shu. And so she is here. And that leaves, let me just do one last roll call for now. Gordon Lafer, Judy Newman, Laurel O'Rourke, and Maya Rabasa. And I do not see them, any of you 4 here. Not yet. Okay, so Michelle Shu is here now. And then the others hopefully will show up soon. All right, public comment. Let me state one thing before we turn to public comment. And we have one person signed up for public comment. This is items raised by the audience, and individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes and cannot give their time to another speaker. There is a total of 30 minutes of public comment if someone else signs up for it after we have the first one speak, or the one speak. If additional time for public comment is needed, it will be at the end of the meeting. Speakers may offer objective comments or criticism about district operations and programs. The district has a board policy for filing a formal complaint against an individual. Please contact the superintendent's office at 541-790-7707 for more information about submitting a formal complaint. Again, we have one person signed up. So if Lisa will move that speaker to panelist and they can turn their camera on, and the speaker's name is Cherie Hauk. And let me ask Cherie, am I pronouncing your name right? And are you here?
I am here and you are pronouncing it correctly. Thank you.
Excellent. And is someone on staff keeping track of time? I know it's only one person at this point giving public comment, but we should.
I have
best
it,
we can
Josh.
follow.
I'll
Awesome.
keep time.
Thank you, Lisa. Cherie, if you are ready, please go ahead. Thank you.
I am Cherie Hauk. I'm the College and Career Center Coordinator at Churchill High School. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I do want to say I love working for 4J. I love my job. I love our students. In considering a budget, I believe all classified employees believe it is imperative to consider us in your discussions. We're a diverse group that bring a breadth of knowledge, skill, and experience to our positions. We're passionate about the work we do and the students for which we do it. Our contributions are immense and long-lasting. Tonight, I'd like to ask you to consider 3 things for us. First, classified employees deserve a living wage, no matter what position we do. 2, we deserve the same respect given to our certified colleagues. That can take many forms, but of course, being paid a living wage goes a long way to showing us that respect. And third, and this is very important to me, and I can only speak for myself, if we have the skill set, the knowledge, the experience to perform a job, let us do it. It will help our building, our students, and our colleagues. Use me, use everything I bring to the table. But in doing so, pay me accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. Is anyone else signed up for public comment? Andrea, I'm looking at you, or Lisa.
There is no one else signed up for public comment. Thank you.
Excellent. I also just want to remind anyone listening in the public that if you have any comments, you can go to the 4J webpage and email the budget committee and or the board from there. So if you have other public comment, either to us as a committee or going forward as the board considers the budget, which is done in June, please do feel free to do that or to attend the meetings. With that said, we move on to items for information. And I will turn it over to, who am I turning it over to? Andrea, I believe. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me. I kind of relocated off to home because of the issues that we ran into today with the network. So I'm coming to you from my craft room / library / everything else room. I'm going to bring up the slideshow just as a point of reference, but we will kick it off hearing from Brooke Wagner and possibly some other staff members around prevention services. So I'm going to share my screen. And, oh, Carrie beat me to it. Okay. Oh, no. Let's try that one more time. Okay, everyone. Can you see my screen? Yes.
Yes, now.
Okay.
Now we can. Can people hear me? Testing all sorts
Yep.
of
Yes.
technology here.
Can you make
One
it
of the
bigger?
One
I
of the
can
things.
definitely try.
How about that?
Are we good? I want to make sure I'm not interrupting,
Better, guys?
making it bigger.
And this is also in your packet that you should have received earlier, knowing full well you might not be able to get to it because the internet has gone up and down at 4J.
Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do is kind of highlight 3 areas: prevention services, equity and inclusion highlights and enhancements, and some post-secondary supports. These are topics that have been discussed at length throughout the budget committee meetings we've had this year. And one of the things that under prevention services, we've been able to repurpose some of the money that had been previously in our student wellness and school safety department. And we are focusing on seeding a prevention services area. This is something that happens through a lot of different departments throughout the district. And we are bringing together our services under one umbrella. We are in the process of looking to hire a prevention services leader who will work with our mental health specialists, our safety, our social workers, our behavioral safety, our suicide prevention, many of the areas in which prevention services have a thread across multiple departments. This position will report to the assistant superintendent supporting instruction. And this has been an area which we're hoping to have the outcomes of unifying our strategies, increasing more streamlined communication. We know that we have shared a couple different times the different resources we have to support the mental health efforts happening in the district. And our hope is that by having this come together, our wraparound team, people who are doing direct work with students and families will have a support person, and that can improve communication and really being able to connect with our community partners. And Josh, I wasn't sure how you wanted to work tonight, and I apologize if I missed this. Are we wanting to go through the slides and then we have time for questions? Because I can pass the baton to Larry and Misael for equity and inclusion highlights and enhancements.
I think that makes the most sense to go through it that way. I know that there was, as part of the attachment of the materials, there were process questions also, but it seems like if we just go straight forward through the slides first, and then we can get to that part of the presentation and anything else.
Yeah, and to clarify for people just in their packet, we had a number of questions that were asked at the last board meeting budget committee that we provided, and then we provided some additional resources. We have this, our community partners for mental health support, a long list of resources within the district and out of the district. Those are also listed in the packet that you received, I believe, over the weekend. So I will pass to Larry and Misael.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brooke. Good evening. My name is Misael Flores Gutierrez. I am a Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Instruction. Alongside Larry, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Larry Williams, also a Director of Inclusion and Instruction.
For our piece, we will highlight five big buckets of just things we've done this year, and we call them kind of the big rocks. It certainly will not be a totality of summary of all the efforts, but it's just some things we want to highlight. And we'll start with district-wide equity and affinity support structures.
Yeah, so to start, we wanted to share with you guys, we came into this year with some goals that we wanted to strengthen what was already in place. And so one of the things that was occurring in many of the high schools and elementary schools were affinity groups. And so we started out this year. One of our first things was to hire individuals to be in support of creating where there were none and supporting where there were. And so we hired 5 individuals to be affinity group program coordinators for the district. And these are folks that ultimately move around from school to school, supporting the development, supporting the advisors out of the school that often serve as, which are usually teachers, but often serve as supports and advisors for our student affinity groups. And so the affinity groups that we currently support are BSU, which is a Black student union, a Latino student union, an LSU, a NASU, a Native American student union, an APASU, Asian Pacific Islander student union, and our GSAs, Gay Straight Alliance student unions. Once we were able to have those up and running, and ultimately our goal was to have all 5 of those groups running in all high schools and middle schools. We also were able to hire 4 regional equity managers. Regional equity managers work as a little bit, or quite a bit deeper than our program coordinators who specifically focus on the affinity groups. The regional equity managers focus is holistic of the schools, and they operate all directly from our Office of Equity and support the rollouts that we have from our office. So they are boots on the ground in the schools, working directly with students, administrators, and parents and guardians. So these are folks that actually get out there and really mix it up with the community, and has been really beneficial this year.
Thanks, Larry. And a couple other additional noteworthy things that fall under this bullet is, we created a hate and bias response team for the district. We strengthened the ECHO childcare program for young parents. We created an equity website that is now on the 4J website. We're developing a newcomer program for emergent bilinguals. We're in the process of revamping a discipline matrix for K-12. We collaborated with stakeholders to adopt and pass a racial harassment policy. And so those are just a couple other things we wanted to highlight for that one, for that bullet point. For the next bullet point, focus on services to students and families. And in this piece here, you may be aware of our wraparound program that was started 2 years ago. Well, now it's actually housed at a house next to River Road, Camino del Rio. And now it's known as the 4J Family Welcome Center. And there, you can learn more about that on our website as well, but I'd love to just tell you a little bit about it. And it's really, the goal is to have a one-stop center for families to enroll their children in 4J and provide additional supports. And so some of the things that they do is, of course, access to food. They have a clothing closet, school supplies, but they also make referrals to school and community services to meet basic needs, and they collaborate with district social workers. They do problem solving for barriers to academic success. Attendance is one example. They assist newcomers and families with language and other cultural barriers, and of course, school enrollment support. They do much more than that, but those are some of the things that they do, and you can learn more about them on our website. The next bullet's third-party partnerships. We have several this year. I suppose we could start with our first one is Anti-Defamation League, ADL, and we have partnered with them to bring No Place for Hate. It's a campaign that will be exclusively at the secondary level this year, but we plan to do a 3-year to start campaign, and it's focused on bullying and harassment. We've also partnered with Food for Lane County with their mobile pantry. And so each week on Wednesdays, one of our regional schools and of course our district office hosts the Food for Lane County mobile pantry, and folks can come and shop for food. And it's been hugely successful. The other one is Western Regional Educator Network. We've partnered with them and of course, also with EEA to help support our BIPOC teachers. Our district social workers have partnered with agencies in the community, for example, Looking Glass Community Services and Strong Integrated Behavioral Health to support students and families with mental health. And those are just a couple of the third-party partnerships.
The fourth piece is professional development for teachers and staff, and topics that focused on equity and inclusion. We kicked off the year this year working directly with administrators. One of our big tasks this year was to begin building capacity. As you look at equity and inclusion work, it needs to start at the top. And so we pulled all administrators on the first couple days during the year to work with them, did a couple lengthy trainings with them. As the school year moved on, when teachers arrived, we took all of the new teachers and did sessions with newly arriving teachers surrounding equity bias and inclusive practices. Throughout the year, we continue to run trainings with our administrative teams. We did a number of different book studies. We took our TOSA groups, which are teachers on special assignments, and we did a book study, worked with our elementary group using a completely different book. If you're interested in those books, we can also share which books we use for those. We also, as we begin working with the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, just so you know, we've squared away and have confirmed trainings for next year with their organization in order for it to align closely with our students' campaign, the No Place for Hate.
Thanks, Larry. I will add also, we engaged in a 6-week course this year with Universal Design for Learning with Andrew Tisha Fitzgerald. And so that was hugely successful. And it's actually something we hope to continue the next academic year. And we can talk a little more about that if you have questions. The last bullet is curriculum, library resources, and tech to support students and staff learning. And some of the highlights for our EL program in particular, we finalized the purchase of systematic ELD. So now we have the same curriculum being used district-wide to support our emergent bilinguals. And that's a pretty big deal. And along with that, we've provided professional development for teachers, for EL teachers. We've also created, or in the process of creating, an equity library for the district. So it'll go live next year, but folks from across the district will be able to check out different books from our department, from our office. And so we're pretty excited about that. We also created the Equity Extra, which is our equity newsletter that goes out once a month, and it has a ton of resources and PD opportunities there. And then also to support our emergent bilinguals, in working with our technology department, we purchased phones for newcomers with apps that help translate in real time. And so we're in the process of getting feedback and making that stronger. So those are just a couple things. And
we're more than ready to answer questions now, or if you guys want to get all the way through the presentation, that's fine as well.
Yeah, thank you. You know what, I think there's one more slide about the post-secondary supports, and then on the agenda, and the next slide after that's committee discussion. So with everyone's permission, I'll ask for that next presentation about post-secondary success and then stop. We can have a committee discussion, including questions in all three areas that that staff has focused on. So is it Andy or who's next to speak on the post-secondary supports?
I do believe that's me.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. In terms of what do we do, as I understand the question posed at the previous meeting, to help students prepare for entry into college. Some of the things that we're doing is investing in new CTE programs and strengthening existing programs that we have, like Future Build, so that students can choose if they wish to go into a high wage, high demand job right out of high school, or oftentimes it leads into some post-secondary certification program or even a 4-year degree, working with industry to see how we might enhance the programs that we have right now, and what investments can we make so that they really are relevant to the students that are currently in our schools. We ensure that students who seek college level credit have access to high quality opportunities. And that includes, for example, students having access to teachers to do study sessions to prepare for AP and IB tests, opportunities to help them prepare for final exams at LCC. And would you mind scrolling to the very bottom? Yes, thank you. And then one of the things that we have as an example is our AVID program, Advancement via Individual Determination, where all students get support in completing their FAFSA, college applications, scholarship support. We have nights in which we help students and families complete the FAFSA for application for federal aid who are not in AVID. All college and career centers available to assist students with their post-secondary plans, be it college, military, employment. The last 2 years have been difficult, certainly the one in which students weren't on our campuses so that they could access college and career centers. But thankfully, we've been back enrolling all of this year. And again, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you to all the staff who have just spoken. Like I said, I think at this point, I want to turn over to any questions committee members may have. And one thing I will just, as chair, kind of just say for all of us is we really appreciate the work that went into this, and the piece that I sort of was thinking as I was listening is, we vote to approve and we look at numbers and dollars and where it's assigned and all that kind of stuff. But when we hear the details that we just heard about some of these programs, and I know there are many others, but these were some that we were particularly interested in as a committee, it really brings it to life. It's not just numbers and dollars. It really tells us how the district is doing things that really impact kids and students, and that's really the key here. So I will ask for members of the committee who have questions or comments to raise their hand, and I'll start a queue. And if not, I see one. Juan Carlos, and then I'll put myself in the queue. But if anyone else raises your hand in the interim, I'll put you ahead of me. Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, Mr. Flores. Thank you so much for the presentation. I don't normally want to see a lot of content because then it kind of gets lost in the translation. You were graciously going through the bullet points, which is fantastic. But this is an example. I would be interested in learning all the details that you filled in as you were speaking, because there's a lot of info that really needs to get out to the public. All these different programs you have, it'll be good. I mean, I'm sure you have a document that the two of you put together. I've learned a lot today, especially around the affinity groups and the equity, and you're talking about the affinity group coordinators and even the regional equity managers. All of that info is important for it to get out, because sometimes we go about our business and we assume that work is not really taking place to the extent that you presented it, which is fantastic. I like it. My question is the following. You mentioned hate and bias response team. That's really what I want to narrow my questions, and only two of them. And wanted to know, I assume that the hate and bias response team is focused around student body, I assume. But what I like, and this is fantastic because then the students feel supported, therefore the families. But what I'd like to know is, how is that program supporting teachers? If 4J is doing a good job into hiring teachers of color and those that have different backgrounds, there is going to be some misunderstandings, miscommunication issues. So I'd like to know how the teachers, you can take this question with you, but it's not necessary for here, how the teachers could be supported. A teacher who, say for example, that a teacher of color is being affected by bias or even hate, how is that a response? How do you do a response? What kind of mechanisms are there for the teacher? Because the well-being of that teacher means they have the best outcome for the kids. And then you talked about partnering and you bring other community members, or you're going out to the community. I'd like to see which groups you're talking with. And also the third question is, have you considered reaching out to civil rights organizations like NAACP, LULAC, Blacks in Government, the ACLU, but I'd like to see and hear about it. So you can take these questions home and send them later. But again, thank you for your time.
Would you like us to speak to any of it now, or is it best to take those in the interest of time?
I think we have time. So why don't you go ahead, and then I see Tom also with his hand up after, but go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to the committee piece, and the committee is really formed to support in incidences and sort of crisis in incidences. And we really got together after a couple of incidences at North, and we created a very large group, because the work doesn't stop for everyone when a crisis comes about. And so that way we can always have a fairly sizable group to lend our voice to any incident that occurs on an individual campus. And so right now there's about 25 of us that serve on the committee, and it's sort of a broad group. We tried to get 2 people from each department, so that if one is busy, the other could attend, so that when an incident arises. Fortunately, after the North Region incidences, we haven't had maybe 1 or 2 times that we've gotten together and really helped an administrator from a building work through an issue over the last 3 meetings. So we meet once per month. Over the last 3 meetings, what we do is we get together and we go through scenarios. So some of the scenarios are actual events and things that have occurred in our schools, and we've kind of documented them and brought those to the group and allowed people to do breakouts and talk about, direction. What do they believe should happen, so that then we can all get back together and talk it through in order sort of just to sharpen our ability, 1, to work together, and 2, for us to kind of lean on each other and learn a bit of how each individual in the group thinks best. And so that's kind of how we're using that incidents and bias
Response team.
Yeah, so that we're ready for the response, and in hopes that we never have to. But unavoidably, I'm certain we will. But we really are trying to be useful. In incidences where it's more of adult to adult, is also an opportunity for us if an administrator is wondering how they should proceed, or if an individual teacher wanted to bring something to the team, that would also be possible. And we have folks from legal on there. We have people from human resources in with us, so that they can help us with the judgment of, is this something legal, or is this something that should go through human resources and not through our team? Just because, you could end up in situations of privacy and stuff like that. So we have folks on there that can also advise our team on how to work best on specific incidences. What I will share with you is we have this year met a few times with the NAACP and a number of other organizations to kind of hear from them as community partners. What do they need, and what do they see as some of the barriers to working closely with the district? And we'll continue to do our outreach in order to strengthen our work alongside of others, because it really is community, and definitely when incidences occur, the whole community is affected. So, Misael, anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add, Juan, for one of your questions, or rather comments about what we're doing and what we have done this year, and that it's not potentially getting out to the community. We recognize that, and so we're working to figure out how do we communicate effectively to the public so that folks know what we're working on. Because certainly it's not anything that we're doing in secret. It's just, we're just not getting it out there. And so that's something that we will put our heads together and we'll do a better job of.
And I highly encourage you to not just rely upon one organization. I'm sure you've listed more, but one is not speaking for all of us. You know, the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, has been here for almost 10 years. Blacks in Government has been around too, the ACLU. So that's some pearls of wisdom. If you haven't, I'm sure you have. But just to say something else real quick, I encourage you, if you haven't, to consider also including microaggressions and unconscious bias in your trainings. That seems to be missing a lot of times because they get to the surface and they think they're done. And the meat and potatoes is on those areas. For two reasons. Number one, sometimes people don't know they're being discriminated, or they're being marginalized, or they're being affected. And then on the other hand, the unconscious bias, how does that affect, their decision making? And so I highly consider ask you to consider adding that to your repertoire as you go along your business. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Juan. And I would just add the final comment that we have this year, and we didn't speak to that in our slide, but the biggest focus for this year has been unconscious biases. And just in fact, we finished our second professional development with the transportation department, in which we covered microaggressions. And so that is something we've done. And actually we covered it with the elementary administrators just the other day as well.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Carlos, for your question and for the answers. Before I turn to Tom, I just want to note that Gordon texted to say he will not be attending tonight. And also I just saw Judy pop up, so she's here. So in terms of attendance, I just want to see if Maya or Laurel is here yet.
They'll be joining, I believe, shortly.
Okay, excellent. So let's keep going. And one thing I would suggest the committee now, time-wise, is any other questions we have from the presentation on these three. I know Tom has his hand up. I had a question as well. And then if there's no other questions after that, or once we finish the questions, if you looked at the packet of materials, it did include some answers to our questions from last time, and it was grouped, I thought, very smartly in three areas. One was process questions, one was programs and services, and one was employment. And I don't know that we would need to have it read to us word for word, but once we finish questions on this part of the presentation, it might be useful if there's anything that superintendent or anyone else wants to add in about that. So, but for now, let's turn to Tom.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to Larry and Misael for your presentation and what you put on the slides. It's impressive what you've thought about. And I raised my hand at the beginning of it, and then you kind of picked up an area which I was really, what I wanted to comment on. And I'm glad you talked about it, was the community engagement, which is the key to all of this. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I know I'm a little bit of a broken record with regard to community engagement, but I see that as the key to this committee. It's the reason I think most of us are on it, that we're supposed to be representing the community. However, I think that the timeline is always late. The budget committee really gets going in winter. And I know this starts very early. And I'd like to see, I could say this now, but there's also a spot at the end of this meeting where there would be time to, how do we change this? How can we improve the type of input that we're getting? But somehow I'd like to see the timeline on what this committee, when it does its work. I'd like that somehow to be moved up, that when you guys are out there and when you're engaging building-based liaisons, and when you're engaging with different groups all over the community, that somehow this group also is represented. I would very much like to be part of that, and I think that there are many people on the committee that could help in that work, to hear what people are satisfied with and what they're not satisfied with and what they really need. So I would just like to plant that seed right now. and not just this area, but also when we start talking about mental health later on in the presentation, and pretty much everything we do. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And I just want to jump in and say I concur with that. And I want to say that the housekeeping and next steps at the end is about that kind of one of the points there is this about next year's schedule, how we can start earlier perhaps. And I mentioned earlier in the meeting that I had spoken with two particular people on the committee about this very issue. And I just want to out them because it was great that we had these conversations. Ann Fifield and Juan Carlos Valier, I really appreciate that coming to me with that, and I brought it to the agenda. And thank you, staff, for adding it on. Because I think, Tom, your point, like I said, I concur. I think it's very important. And again, I want to thank the others who had spoken about that.
Thank you. Yeah, just real quick in response to Tom's comment about timeline for meetings and being more informed for these decision-making processes that we're going through. I'm a little bit hesitant for us to schedule more and more budget committees earlier in the year, where I think that there's opportunities for us to engage with staff members who are doing these presentations to the board already, and the superintendent does presentations throughout the year during board meetings. Or maybe we can be more engaged with the board meetings or reading the board minutes. That way, maybe staff don't have to present both to the board and to the budget committee, just as far as process and using time effectively and respecting, the work that's being done is really good work. I just don't want folks to have to present multiple venues the same information. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that comment, Gary. And I just want to note that I see Maya Rabasa has joined. So for attendance purposes, hi, Maya. And I think, like I said, Laurel is the one we're still waiting on if she will join us. And Gordon, again, will not be here today. With no other hands up, I just want to add my question, if I may, before we move on to the rest of the presentation and some of those questions that we had asked. And I just want to, again, and not to, I guess we're all focused on the equity piece of the three presentations, and all were very good, but I just want to say a couple of quick things. One is, I think it was during the first bullet point when Larry Williams was talking about the regional equity managers and then mixing it up with the community. And I just want to make sure we keep that in mind. And, however that is done is so important. And, again, of the 14 of us here, 7 are elected, 7 are appointed, but we are people who have made the time to be here on a Monday night when there could be a lot of other things to do, and not everyone has that privilege. And so again, I want us always to remember that, and that we have to do our best as a committee, the board, and obviously 4J as a district to really try to get to learn what people out there need. And the other thing I just want to say, I thought it was interesting when it was the fourth bullet point under equity, and you talked about starting with administrators and building capacity starting at the top. And at first my thought was, wait a minute, you don't want to do it top down. But then I realized you have to get administrators with new folks too, but it's also bottom up. And I think we all realize that. And so it sounds like I apologize, I can't remember which of you two presented on that bullet point. But I just thought it was great how you did talk about like new teachers and how they would become involved as wellness. So I just think that I just want to make that point. I think that was important and I appreciated it. At this point, if there's any other questions, I don't see any hands up from committee members. So help me a little bit, either Sydney or Andrea, I don't see you, but if there's a way to take us through some of those questions that we had from before that were answered in the materials, or if there's anything in particular you want to point out. Like I said, it's broken into 3 sections. One was about process questions that our committee had. One is programs and services. And then the last was about employment. If there's anything in particular you want to point out or bring us through, I invite you to do that now.
So Andrea, I think the one that was asked a number of times was the $18 per hour one. And I would like Andrea, just because when she describes that it's hard to estimate the range, but she has a range for us. And I think it's easier if she takes it, only because she was the one that wrote it and she knows it best. and I'm putting you on the spot and I can't tell, but anyway, so there's one that I think we should for sure talk about, and then perhaps other people could ask, and people who submitted could answer.
Let me just jump in. I appreciate that. I'm putting you both on the spot, I guess, but I think it is an area that there was interest in. And for those with the materials, either if you're in the public looking at the 4J website, or those of us on the committee who had the materials, it's question 18 of the questions, and it was asking about, as you just heard, about $18 an hour.
And
Go
then
ahead.
Josh, and
Yeah.
then Josh, one more, well,
Mhm.
maybe Andrea can just move her way into this one, transition herself,
Mhm.
is that there are reasons why we needed this budget meeting today, even though we had a ton of tech problems and we all went home and we figured it out, but we're on a tight timeline now. And so if Andrea, you could talk about the tight timeline and what to do if we want to change the budget later.
Okay.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'll dive on in here. So on the topic of $18 an hour as a minimum wage, there are different ways that that type of idea could be implemented at the district. So in some cases, that could be just like on our salary schedule. If a wage is below the Oregon minimum wage, which is over $13 for next year, we automatically within our system, you might say reset or apply the Oregon minimum wage for that employee. So even if listed on our pay schedule that hourly wage is less, it is corrected in the payroll system, just as an FYI. So one way that a change in the minimum amount that we pay per hour could be implemented would be to set the system where wherever an individual was making less than $18 per hour, that the system would automatically move them to that pay scale. So that is one way that something could be implemented. You can see here, Carrie's brought up our 2021-22 classified salary schedule. Now, another way that typically you see a salary schedule changed is that you set a base wage at step one of a specific grade. So let's say step one of grade 4 is reset to be the minimum wage, and then that wage grows throughout the schedule. So it increases by the amount of a step increase, and then it grows as it moves up in each grade. Something to remember about our classified pay scale, and this is historical, it was this way well before I came and probably back into time. The percentage difference between grades is not equal. So if you start with a base wage, the growth of that wage is different between grades. So the difference between one grade may be around 4%, and the next may grow as much as 7%. This has a pretty profound impact on the pay scale if you start at a rather high number down on grade 4, step 1. And that can be, millions or tens of millions of dollars per year in increases, because folks at the bottom of the scale may see an increase in their wage of over 40%. Well, folks at the top may see a lesser percentage increase, but still, let's say over 10%. When you look at that across the board, it becomes unsustainable very quickly. There's also the ability to look at the pay scale and say, I want to set that, but I want to set it at a higher step and grade than grade 4, step 1. That, of course, is going to also change the costing. So it really comes down to, it depends on how you implement that decision, is how you would, how much it would cost you in in any given year. Now, typically, I'm just going to kind of roll over into what things look like when it comes to negotiations. So typically, compensation is a part of negotiations. It's something that the board, with their designated negotiator, sits down to the table with our union representatives, and they talk through what is important to each side. What do the folks in, let's say, our classified union or our licensed union, what's important to them from the viewpoint of compensation or from benefits or from other things that may help them do their job or just be an important support for them. Once those decisions have been made, those proposals have been exchanged, and a winning proposal has been selected by both parties, then that proposal goes to the union, to the folks who are in the union, to your classified folks or your licensed folks for ratification. It also comes to the board of directors for approval. Now, quite often this happens after the adopted budget has already been adopted. We don't always look out and have our negotiations conclude in time for everyone to wrap this up nicely and put it into the adopted budget. That is why in local budget law, we have what's called a supplemental budget. So what happens is typically we see negotiations conclude maybe October or November. In the past, that's kind of been our time frame. And what happens is we calculate the additional costs that will be implemented by the district as a result of all the negotiation factors, both compensation and, there may be additional positions hired, there may be stipends or other things changed. All of that goes into a supplemental budget and it is brought to the board of directors. They then amend the adopted budget to recognize this additional spending and how it will be funded. Typically, because we don't automatically get new revenue just because we've finished a negotiation, we recognize that additional spending and utilize our reserves to cover those additional costs for the year. Because whenever we have to have a balanced budget, so whenever we add to the spending picture, we have to have a way to support that, and that is typically through our reserves. So at the end of that process, the board of directors, having already approved the proposal as part of that, as part of negotiations, then sees the supplemental budget come to them as an item for action and are able to see the economic impact of that proposal and approve it for ongoing action for the district. In some cases, that action will be a retroactive action where we may pay folks back, a COLA or other adjustment back to July 1st or whenever that agreement is enacted. In some cases, it may be a forward-looking spend. It might be an increase in stipends that will then be paid at a later date. Some of our stipends are year-end stipends. But in any case, we must appropriate that additional spending to be able to legally fulfill our duty on the proposal and on the negotiations. So that's how the budget, or that's how the board of directors will address the conclusion of our negotiations with our classified union.
Great, thank you. Before you move on to the other question that that Sydney had suggested, I just want to see if there's any questions or comments. I will just make one quickly with everyone's permission. In my job, I'm HR manager at Lane Council of Governments, and I could tell we have almost 300 employees now, and I could tell you I've learned so much about this in this life, and so some of this info I'm hearing about costs and how it's not just salary, but like you said in question 14, the total cost. If you look at total compensation, which includes salary plus payroll costs and benefits and all that, was an average of 116,000. And so I know that, I can't remember the percentage, but I remember we've been told as a budget committee in the past that something like 80% or 85% budget is personnel, right?
86, I believe.
And so, and I guess there's 14 that I just went, thank you, Carrie, yeah. So is that, so what is that number again that is personnel?
So are you thinking the average teacher salary?
85%.
No, I'm sorry, I mean like the 85%.
Yeah,
so 85% of the 4J budget is people.
Yeah,
by people I mean
percent
okay,
this
86%,
coming
okay,
up.
yeah.
Yes, it's true that we are, you would say we're big people taking care of little people, but we are a people organization. I mean, this is what powers 4J. And this is true for many districts. The largest amount of spending is in our people.
Well, good. Well, thank you for answering my question there. I think in the interest of, let me see, well, it's 6:55, so we have a couple more minutes. Let's, if you could go to that other question that was presented to you again on the spot, but about process and timing.
Yes, thank you. So one of the requirements that we have is the requirement for preparation before the Board of Directors holds their first meeting on the proposed budget. So that first meeting is scheduled for June 1st. Now, what has to happen before that first meeting is 30 to 5 days prior to that meeting, we must post in a newspaper of general circulation in our district, a summary presentation of our proposed budget. So you might have seen it last year. I think that they thought we couldn't, we needed it to be a little bigger because it took up half the page in the Register Guard. But what it does is it gives a very high level summary of what our budget looks like, the big moving factors for both resources and requirements, and it summarizes all of our numbers showing in the general fund and other funds, so that anyone who is preparing to come to speak at that first meeting has a very high level view of what's happening and what the numbers are before they arrive. Of course, the proposed budget is posted out on our website. If they have, very specific questions, they can always dive in. But this is required, as I said, to be out there and available at least 5 days before the meeting. So typically what happens is we must provide this to the Register Guard by Wednesday at noon for a Sunday publication. So this means that to make this publication date for this next Sunday, we'll need to wrap everything up and be able to send that to the Register Guard by noon on the 18th. And then it will post for, I believe the 22nd is that Sunday. If we miss that date, our next Sunday is too close to the June 1st meeting to meet the local budget law requirement. So this is why we are saying this is kind of our drop dead point. We really need to get this done so that we can ensure we are within requirements and we are ready for that first meeting where we will hold the official public testimony. So there actually has to be a special public testimony section of the Board of Directors meeting as recognized by local budget law at that first meeting. And then at the second meeting, the board will have the opportunity to adopt the budget and the taxes and levies. So that's why this is important as getting things wrapped up so that we can meet that publication deadline and make sure that we are ready to go for the board on June 1st.
If I may, thank you, Andrea. If I may, so before we move to item Roman numeral 5, which is items for action, which does include approving the meeting minutes from our previous meetings and also then approving the proposed budget and declaring the tax rates and debt service levy. Just had one quick question on what you said. The Board of Directors, meaning the 4J School Board, it's in our material, says it's a June 1st meeting, which is that public budget hearing, and then June 22nd enact resolutions to adopt it. So the point is that there's two, is there public comment available at both of those meetings, or is it more that the first one is for public comment and the second one is more just voting?
The first one is a required public comment period just for the budget. So that's required by local budget law. We of course have public comment at every one of our Board of Directors meetings. So someone could definitely come to the meeting on the 22nd and give public comment regarding the budget. But it's required that we have that special hearing to allow the public to weigh in on the proposed budget at our first meeting where that budget is presented.
Great, thank you. So for everyone here, any other comments you may have, and also obviously anyone in the public, please go to the 4J website and note those dates. And obviously public comment is welcome and important then. So with that said, without seeing any other hands up for comment, 7 o'clock is on the agenda, and it actually is 7 o'clock. Wow, that's really good. Do I have anyone who was willing to make a motion regarding the approval of meeting minutes for budget committee meetings from April 25 and May 2nd, as you see on our screen.
I'll move those.
Tom has moved it. Is there a second? Gary has seconded. Any discussion over the approval of meeting minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question. We are 12 people right now out of 14, but I think we still need a majority, right? Okay, of the 14, I believe. Okay, so all in favor of Tom's motion to approve his minutes, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? And for anyone opposed, please say it verbally because I can't see everyone's face on the screen right now. And any abstentions? Hearing none, I believe we are 12-0 to approve the minutes. Okay. Next is to approve the proposed budget. Oh, Juan Carlos, your hand is up. Is that for this motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make two motions. And the first one is I move to approve the budget as amended and presented and to be sent to the board for consideration.
And so let's do one motion at a time. And let me just ask someone on staff to help. Can Juan Carlos refer to what we see on the screen, or does he have to say all the words that are in that approved budget message?
He
as
needs
part of his
to,
motion?
oh, sorry, Josh.
Go ahead. Yeah.
He needs to say the amount for general fund total and the amount for other funds total. It's noted here on the slide. So if he could read, read the two statements here, then we'll have those exact amounts in the minutes for compliance.
Great, thank you. Juan Carlos, do you want to restate your motion? Thank you.
I move to approve the budget proposal with the general fund total of 270,328,481 as amended, and the other funds total of 277,587,598 as amended as well, and to be forwarded to the board for consideration.
Excellent. Thank you for that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dakota, second. Any discussion on, I'm sorry, Maya.
I have a question.
Yeah, who is that, Maya
Ann.
or?
No,
Ann?
it's Ann. Sorry, I can't find where to raise my hand on the screen.
Okay, and go ahead, and then Maya after Ann. Go ahead, Ann.
What Juan Carlos said was as amended, but the actual motion is or as amended. Does it need to have an as amended in there?
Go ahead.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to say, we do not have any amendments, so it will not have an impact on the balance.
Got it. Juan Carlos, will you take as a friendly amendment what Ann said about putting that word or in before the as amended as it is on the screen?
There's no friendly amendment. Yeah, I'm willing to take that off.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Andrea, is that okay the way it motion
That's perfect.
Great. Well, Maya, your hand is up. Go ahead.
So I have to apologize if this question was already answered earlier in the meeting. I'm wondering if this budget that is being asked to be approved, does it include the pilot project of 4 or 3 or 4, I forget the number, librarians that Gordon has been asking for months to be included in our budget?
So we were planning to pay for that out of ESSER and the board would vote on it, but it doesn't have to be part of this.
The funding is already available to do that if the board so chooses, as part of these balances.
Okay. So, and then just to clarify, I was looking through the list of questions, the Art Spark thing that I keep talking about. I see that we have 75,000 that's still allocated. Is the reason that we wouldn't need to amend the budget because 25,000 isn't enough of a change to amend it if that is deemed necessary? And how will we communicate with, or how would that be decided if we were going to be adding to that? I just want to know what the metric would be.
I can answer that. And we actually have a community engagement budget that would pick up any difference between the 75 $75,000 that is in the instruction budget and what ArtSpark needs to run a full program. So those funds are included in these dollars.
Okay. And is there a particular reason why we're not funding them at the level that they are communicating a need for?
We did not receive a request for that larger funding level. And we have set them at 75 because in the past we actually expended about 60,000. So we thought 75 would be, provide some room for growth, but we do understand that there may be a difference, and we have made sure that in the past we did fund ArtSpark through this community engagement funding source, and we will be able to do so again if additional funds are needed.
So just for the future, just to understand the process, when you say we haven't received a request, if ArtSpark contacted me and I brought it forward as a board member, should I have told them to send in something? Did I do something wrong by thinking that I was communicating a message on their behalf?
Maya, can I?
Judy, go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, I also talked with ArtSpark. I know the person at Layton Arts Council, and they reached out. I think there's a meeting being set up to have that conversation with the superintendent. I think Lisa was setting it up. So the emails come through. So I think there needs to be a conversation, and they would be reaching out. And I think they have. I just don't think the meeting's happened. Is that correct, Superintendent?
That is correct. And Maya, I know that you see 75,000, that's just from instruction. So the other portion would come from the I forgot what it's called, the community something.
Community engagement
account. And so we have one in instruction that you can see, but there's another one that we can pull it from should it be 100,000. And we just haven't, we played phone tag with ArtSpark. So
ultimately, at the end of the day, we are, as a district, committed to making sure that ArtSpark happens in its full glory.
Yes, we've paid for it every time they've asked. When Gus was here, and most recently last year. So I can see why it looks like we're
right. I just wanted to make sure, because there was concern about their decreased funding from other sources, to make sure that we will still be getting the same level of services. So okay. And then just to clarify again, the librarian thing then will be coming from ESSER funds, and that doesn't have to be included.
The board, not the budget committee. The board will have to vote on that and tell us the direction they want to go.
Okay.
The board as a whole. So 4 of 7. You've been really busy, you all.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Anne, and then Maya. Any other discussion on the motion from Juan Carlos? Again, it's the approving the budget, seconded by Dakota. Seeing no hands up, I call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Dakota, you have your hand up. Oh, you're voting. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to double check. Universal free lunch is part of this budget, correct?
That is correct. We have that planned for next year, supported through our general fund.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Dakota, thank you for bringing that up again. And I know I've said this here before, but it's something that's very meaningful and important to me as well. And I know others on this committee have said that this year. So now, with all that discussion, let's call the question. All in favor of the budget? I'm sorry, of the motion to approve the budget, as Juan Carlos said, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All opposed, please speak, because I can't see every finger. I can't see every finger. I can't see every picture. I hear no opposition. Any abstentions? Again, speak if you could. But I believe it is 12. We're 12 here tonight. Someone help me. Yes, 12. So it's 12-0 to support or to approve the motion. Excellent. I know that there's one more motion we need to make. on the declaring taxes and levies. Is there anyone who wants to raise their hand on that? You could kind of read what's on the screen. I see Erica. Go ahead.
Yes, I move that we pass the general fund tax rate of 4.7485 per 1,000 of assessed valuation of the district, and local option levy tax rate of $1.50 per 1,000 of assessed valuation of the district, and debt service fund tax levy of $40,609,690.
I second.
So we have a motion from Erica to declare taxes and levies as she described with those numbers, and a second from Juan Carlos. Do we have any discussion on this motion? Erica, I see your hand still up, and my guess is it's just from the making the motion. Okay. Anyone? Excellent. Again, I will just say one thing as part of discussion, which is, again, I said this before, we're looking at numbers here, but always remember that these are people, our kids, our future behind these numbers. And so again, I'm excited to support this motion. Let's call the question. All in favor of the motion from Erica to declare taxes and levies, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I hear a lot. I see a lot. Any opposed, please speak. Any abstentions, please speak. Hearing none of either of those, I believe we have passed it 12-0. Excellent. We are at the oh, and I guess Andrea, is there anything more we need to do to have this be sent to the board next, or is it just what we did? We'll make that happen.
Yep, that's
Excellent.
all that we needed, and we will get that that small summary out to the register guard to make sure that we meet all of our requirements, and we will be all set for the board of directors meeting on June 1st.
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we move to housekeeping next steps, I see a hand up, Sydney.
Oh, no, I was gonna talk in housekeeping. I was trying to, you know, be ahead of you, sorry.
Oh, excellent. No, that's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Let me just say, in the slides, you will see that the next meetings, as we said, are board of director, the 4J board, which is June 1st and June 22nd. And now we're up to the housekeeping and next steps. And Andrea, I'm sorry, Sydney, go ahead.
Okay, so in housekeeping, I just wanted to take my here. So what we can do, because we'll need to advertise for librarians if that's what you hope to do. But what we would need is some sort of direction, like the 3 lowest title schools, you know, that piece, just to make sure that everyone agrees when we put it forward for the board. And then I also wonder if at leadership, and this one's for Judy and Maya as well, that we could talk about how to start earlier. So if the budget committee wants to help form the budget, it just can't start at the end. So I wanted to talk about that, and this is where the place not to talk about it, but just to say we would talk about it in leadership and then bring it forward, because the next budget committee membership wouldn't start until after July 1st. Does that make sense? You all pick the new ones if anyone's going off, and so we wouldn't do that until later.
Maya, go ahead.
Just in response to the point about the librarians, I will I'll make sure Gordon prepares something. You like how I voluntold him?
Yeah, I could also reach out to him because we've talked about it a couple of times. So
yeah,
thank you, Maya.
Great, thank you.
If I may just frame the conversation a little bit, for those listening, there were 2 particular items that we added to this housekeeping and next steps, and that the superintendent just referenced. One is if there were any outstanding items or topics to be researched or discussed in the future, either at a future budget committee meeting or through presentation to the board of directors, meaning the 4J board. And for example, the one that Maya had brought up and that Gordon had brought up previously and Sydney just talked about was about a pilot program about librarians, for example. And then the second of the 2 bullet points was suggestions for next year's budget committee schedule and sessions. And it's true, those of us on this committee serve through, I believe, June 30. I'm looking for someone to nod or tell me I'm wrong, but otherwise I'll assume that's okay. And
You're right.
there are of the 7 lay people, I believe there's a couple of folks whose terms end, but then anyone, the board reaches to out to the public for anyone who's interested, whether you're on the committee or not in the fall. I'm sorry, in the fall, correct? To apply to be appointed to this budget committee. And then the question there, and I see a couple hands up, so I'll call them in a second. Is if there's a way to start this process earlier than we have been, which has been in February. And I see Erica and then Gary and then
A couple of things,
So
something
go ahead,
to
Erica.
bring up in the future. You know, thinking about weekend, I was wondering if, I mean, I don't know, or maybe I could be wrong, but I would really like restorative justice at all levels to sort of address these things or sort of preempt them happening, you know, especially when we hear about that this person had issues in high school. And I just feel like, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric about anti-CRT legislation, et cetera. But I feel like the time is now, we're very overdue actually to be making some steps about this in public education. And I feel like restorative and transformative justice programs would be it. So I'd really like to see at some point that, you know, that is a very concrete, you know, line item thing that we are putting money towards, because it benefits everybody, the staff, the students, the community. So just wanted to put that out there because, you know, Buffalo has been weighing heavily on all of us. And the other thing I really would like to say is I do agree that we should probably start meeting in December. I think there's just, I think the complexities of public education and, you know, the different things that have been going on, you know, in our region and nation over the past couple of years really dictate that we need, this is a little bit more complicated. So I would propose for us meeting earlier. Thank you.
I see 3 members with hands up, but first I see one staff person. Carrie, was there something you wanted to say that was in response to something that just came up, or otherwise I'll just put you in the queue with the others?
If it is helpful, I can share information about the budget committee appointments.
Sure, actually, let's do that since I just referenced it, and then I'll have Gary, Juan Carlos, and Ann after that. Thank you, Carrie. Go ahead.
Yes, so we do have budget committee members, the lay members of the budget committee, the 7 members who are not elected members of the school board, serve on a rolling basis. So every year, 2 or 3 budget committee members' terms expire. And budget committee members can apply for appointment to another term. There is no limitation on terms, and the school board considers them among anybody else who has applied to serve in the positions. In order to be a budget committee member, statutorily, one must be a district resident, a registered voter within the district, and cannot be a staff member of the district or a charter school within the district. However, anybody else within the district who is a eligible registered voter can apply to serve on the budget committee. And the 2 people whose terms are expiring in 2022 are Juan Carlos Valle and Dakota Boulette, who all may apply for reappointment when that comes up in the fall. And we'll notify those people directly at that time.
Thank you, Carrie, for clarifying all that. Gary?
Thank you. And it does sound like if we are going to move up the timeline for meetings, then maybe the timeline for applications and appointments to the budget committee would also need to be moved up. I think it's typically done in November. So just keep that in mind. As far as topics for future research, I'm a little bit nervous about all the federal dollars that are coming into the district and how much we're spending on staffing using those dollars. I appreciate, and I think that it is good use of one-time funds for staffing but just understanding that there's going to come a time when those federal dollars are no longer there. And so we will at some point within the next 2 years need to decide which of those staff things we're going to take on and continue funding, and which ones are not going to be able to continue to be funded. So just keeping that in mind, as well as the overall funding levels that we've been given the past 2.5 years through the pandemic. We've got a huge influx of federal dollars, and that's been awesome. I think the district's done a good job of investing those dollars towards our students and families. But with the loss of those, like September 2024 or so is when those funds will dry up, as well as the declining enrollment rates that every district has faced. Just keep in mind that we are going to have this budget cliff that we need to be planning for. And I know it's a couple years out, but just, I don't want to be like Chicken Little or anything, but I do want us thinking about, the future planning and what that's going to mean for us and how we can sort of right size the district and thinking about that future planning. So just, I think that those discussions need to start coming into the conversation sooner than later. As far as like which things we're going to be labeling as just temporary, we're going to temporarily fund these, and then eventually those will go away. Which things that we may be planning to continue to fund. And then last thing, because I might have the opportunity, just thank you to all the staff members who've been providing support for Budget Committee. I really appreciate you and the time that you spent supporting us and getting us all up to speed, as well as the taxpayers who are continuing to fund our district and support our district. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Gary. And I concur with those last comments as well. I have Juan Carlos and Ann in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly wanted to acknowledge Cherie Houck for the comments earlier today regarding the inclusion of classified staff, in that even when the budget committee and the board reaches out to the communities, we also have communities within that we have to and we must listen to, as they obviously will be affected by whatever policies, initiatives the board itself implements. So regarding the future, I would like to hear and learn more about the dual immersion bilingual programs, specifically to hear about what and how has been defined, what programs are there, what are all the programs receiving, are they all programs receiving full support, and would like to hear more details about those and whether or not the district is immersion still, is it dual, is it bilingual, all those things will be important to hear and learn. Are the English materials widely available? I think they are, but are the same thing available for the counter, the Spanish or French or whatever other languages are there? In terms of the librarians, I'm hoping that that's going to move forward and that proposal is going to be there. But because I've heard from different people, including members of the board, about equity, I would like to ask whether or not equity means, again, bilingual, bicultural librarians and access and mitigate language barriers, if that's going to be part of it. If in fact we're talking about equity and access, that'll be important. And the other thing is about having a more in-depth discussion with plans to take action on mental health counselors and talk about what is the greatest need. I think Superintendent Sydney mentioned earlier about where the areas may be with specific schools. I know it was for the library, but also can be started at least a conversation for mental health counselors. What would the structure of such a program would look like? So those are the things that I will be outstanding, but primarily I'm interested in the dual bilingual immersion programs and all that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. And next I have Ann.
I have questions just about the logistics around if we have a meeting earlier in the season so that there's an opportunity to say that I think that I definitely hear it from folks here that we get the budget and it's fully baked, and how can this committee influence that? How do you see the logistics of that? Do we have another meeting before the end of this fiscal year? We're done. We're super done. And so then you'd have us come back maybe in November or December to kind of hear what our ideas are that we'd like to get baked into the budget.
So what I heard is you all wanted to start earlier, which means the board will have to choose, well, appoint 2 people, could be the same 2 people, but they'll have to appoint 2 people, and we need to do it earlier so that we can start meeting earlier. So we also, with the 85%, 86, I guess, part of portion of our budget going to staffing, we have to get you all together earlier because we have to give notice to the employees per state law if they need to look elsewhere for work. And so we just can't wait as long as we've done in the past. And so we just need it to start earlier. So if there's a program you want to do and it means we have to get rid of a different program to make that one work, we just need to start earlier.
I think for all of us, there's, I guess, make sure that we know, like, so we're not asking these kinds of questions too late.
Yeah.
So that it's complex and you guys need, I mean, it's a lot of analysis to do that. And so it'll look different. And so I guess we'll just get emails from you in the fall saying, heads up, think about what you want to put in there.
Right. And some of it will be estimates because we may not have our numbers from the state. Right. There are pieces that we wait for to bring this forward, but we can also still ask for opinion on what programs are working, which ones aren't, and what we need to do next, what you want, what you want to see, what the budget committee wants to see.
I think that I'm excited to see our meetings. Look at,
Gotcha.
I'll bet you do.
I'll just jump in, and I like that, and you were the first person, and then you earlier.
This is really great. Thank you very, very much for all of this information.
Oh, you done, Ian?
Yeah, go ahead, Juan Carlos.
Before we leave the meeting, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you because this was a very robust conversation. There was a lot of things that were brought up, a lot of good, open and honest conversations, respectful. And I do want to say thank you for taking the time. There was many things that I did not know how were working and things that needed to kind of dig into. I appreciate that people were willing to put their questions forward. And of course, the staff to then come back with responses. Obviously, we have a ton of a list of things that we want to, for the budget committee in the future, we'll discuss. But thank you for your effort and your perspectives to bring into this group. I think I learned a lot, and I hope you did too.
Great, thank you. And I will, at 7:29, so in the interest of us finishing within the next minute, I will take the privilege as chair to wrap up and say, first of all, thank you to my fellow lay members of this committee. We just did something big today, and we do it every year, but this feels a little bigger for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe we're moving out of the pandemic and there's still a lot going on. Second, thank you to the board to trust us 7 to join you in. I guess not all 7 of you appointed all 7 of us, but you know what I'm saying, that to have the structure where the board appoints lay people to work alongside you. And then most importantly, thank you to staff for answering our many, many questions and presenting things in manners that we could understand. Usually, sometimes we have questions based on that, and you've been great. So I see it's 7:30. Oh, I see Judy. Okay, I will, Judy as board chair, I will defer to you for the last comment.
I'm not trying to have the last word, but I just wanted to also say thank you from the board's perspective, because I think having more community members in this process is wonderful. And I think starting earlier next year, not only could make our process, be spread out more and more. It also, I think, could be more meaningful and less frustrating too. So thank you, everyone.
Great. And with that, at 7:30 p.m. on the dot, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Buenas
Bye.
noches.